The vast emptiness of space stretched out like a black canvas, dotted with distant starlight. The Compassion Asterisk, a gleaming medical research vessel of the Kryvax Confederation, moved with calculated precision through the edges of the Orion Nebula. Its hull shimmered with a soft blue energy field that protected it from cosmic radiation and microscopic space debris. Captain Dahian stood on the bridge, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his back. His species had long prided themselves on being peaceful explorers and medical experts. The Kryvax were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced healing technologies and their ability to save life in even the most challenging conditions. Their medical ships were more like flying hospitals than traditional spacecraft, equipped with technologies that could regenerate tissue, repair genetic damage, and bring patients back from the brink of death. But today would be different. The ship's advanced sensors had picked up a distress signal that was unlike anything they had encountered before. Most distress calls in deep space were clean, precise, and filled with specific medical information. This one was raw, almost primitive, a simple ping that suggested something was terribly wrong. "Visual confirmation on the damaged vessel," announced Lyra, the ship's junior navigation officer. Her tentacle-like appendages moved swiftly across the holographic control panel, bringing up a detailed image of the damaged spacecraft. The human exploration vessel looked like it had been through a war. Its outer hull was scarred and torn, with massive sections of metal twisted and ripped away. Normal spacecraft would have been completely destroyed by such damage. Yet, somehow, this vessel remained mostly intact, drifting silently against the backdrop of distant star systems. Dr. Ju, the chief medical officer, leaned forward. Her large, almond-shaped eyes narrowed as she studied the damaged ship's readings. "Life signs are minimal," she reported, her voice calm but with an underlying tone of professional concern. "But there is definitely something alive in there." Captain Dahian nodded. The Kryvax had a strict protocol for rescue operations. No life was to be left behind, regardless of the species or the complexity of the rescue mission. "Prepare the medical intervention team," he commanded. "We'll dock and conduct a full medical assessment." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Rescue protocols were activated, medical containment chambers were prepared, and specialized medical robots were readied for potential emergency extraction. The Kryvax believed in technology solving problems, and they had a tool or a machine for every possible medical scenario. Or so they thought. As the Compassion Asterisk drew closer to the damaged human vessel, something felt different. The ship's computers couldn't get a clear reading. The life signs were strange, fluctuating in ways that didn't make sense according to any known galactic medical database. "Captain," Lyra called out, a hint of confusion in her voice. "The life signs, they're not following any standard pattern we've seen before." Dahian frowned. In thousands of years of medical exploration, the Kryvax had encountered hundreds of different species. They had developed comprehensive medical databases that could predict biological responses with near-perfect accuracy. But this human vessel was presenting something entirely unexpected. The docking procedure began. Soft mechanical sounds filled the ship as connection tubes extended, seeking to create a sealed pathway between the Compassion Asterisk and the damaged human vessel. Standard procedure dictated a careful, controlled approach. Quarantine protocols were activated. Robotic medical units stood ready to analyze and respond to any potential biological threats. No one on the Kryvax ship could have predicted what they were about to discover. As the airlock doors prepared to open, Captain Dahian felt an unusual sensation. It was something between excitement and a strange sense of apprehension. Something told him that this rescue mission would be unlike any they had ever conducted before. The doors began to slide open, revealing the first glimpse into the mysterious human spacecraft. The airlock hissed open, releasing a burst of stale air that carried the sharp smell of burnt metal and something else, something the Kryvax medical team couldn't quite identify. Dr. Ju's advanced medical scanner swept across the damaged interior of the human spacecraft, its delicate sensors probing for life signs. At first, they saw nothing but destruction. Broken panels hung from the walls. Sparking electrical systems cast eerie shadows across the damaged corridor. Shattered equipment was scattered everywhere, telling a story of violent impact and desperate survival. Then they saw him. Lieutenant Ryan Miller sat propped against a damaged bulkhead. A massive piece of metal shrapnel protruded from his lower abdomen, a wound that would have killed most species instantly. But he was not just alive. He was awake, conscious, and seemingly annoyed. "About time," Ryan muttered, his voice rough but strong. "I was starting to think no one was going to show up." The medical robots moved forward first, their precise mechanical arms extending various scanning and treatment tools. Dr. Jiwoo followed close behind, her three-fingered hands gripping a portable medical analysis device. She expected to find a critically wounded patient requiring immediate intensive care. What she found instead defied everything in her medical training. The human was not only conscious but appeared to be in the process of treating his own catastrophic injury. A makeshift tourniquet made from what looked like pieces of his own uniform was wrapped tightly around his midsection. Next to him lay an assortment of items, what seemed to be a medical kit, but unlike any the Kryvax had ever seen. Captain Daehyun, who had entered the damaged ship behind the medical team, watched in stunned silence. Ryan caught their staring and managed a weak chuckle. "What? Never seen a guy patching himself up before." Dr. Jiwoo's medical scanner was going crazy. The readings made no sense. The shrapnel wound was severe, deep enough to have punctured multiple internal organs. By all standard medical understanding, this human should have been dead, or at the very least, unconscious and in critical condition. Instead, he was alert, coherent, and seemingly annoyed at the interruption. "You need medical assistance," Dr. Jiwoo stated, her translator converting her native language into clear English. Her voice carried the calm, professional tone of a medical expert used to dealing with critical patients. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Really? I thought I was doing pretty well on my own." He gestured to the makeshift medical setup around him. "Just trying to keep myself alive until help arrived." The Kryvax medical team exchanged confused looks. Their advanced medical robots stood ready with nanosurgical tools capable of repairing genetic damage, regenerating tissue, and performing miracles of healing. But this human had already taken significant steps to treat his own catastrophic injury. Captain Daehyun stepped forward. "How are you conscious?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. With an injury of this magnitude, most species would be dead. Ryan interrupted, a hint of sardonic humor in his voice. "Yeah, well, humans are kind of good at not dying." Dr. Jiwoo's scanner continued to provide impossible readings. The human's body was somehow managing the massive trauma. His blood was clotting. Damaged tissue was already showing signs of rapid healing. Pain receptors that should have been overwhelmed were somehow being managed. The medical robots began to approach, their precise mechanical arms extending various treatment tools. But Ryan held up a hand, stopping them. "I appreciate the help," he said, "but I've got this under control." And incredibly, he seemed to mean it. The Kryvax team realized they were witnessing something completely unprecedented. This was not just a medical rescue. This was a fundamental challenge to everything they understood about biological survival. Lieutenant Ryan Miller was rewriting the rules of medical science, one impossible moment at a time. Dr. Jiwoo watched in horror as Ryan reached for a small container near him. The human's movements were slow but purposeful, each action calculated despite the massive injury. Before any of the Kryvax medical team could intervene, Ryan broke the seal on the container and pulled out what looked like a clear liquid. "Wait," Dr. Jiwoo shouted, her translator converting her words into clear English. "You cannot." But it was too late. Ryan began pouring the liquid directly into his wound. The clear substance burned with an intense, almost violent brightness. The medical robot sensors went crazy, detecting extreme chemical reactions. Captain Daehyun and the rest of the medical team watched in absolute shock. The liquid was alcohol-based antiseptic. To the Kryvax, this seemed like pure torture. Any rational being would scream in agony. Their medical technologies were designed to minimize pain, to cushion and protect injured tissues with gentle, precise interventions. Humans, apparently, had a completely different approach. Ryan's face twisted. A grunt escaped his lips, the only outward sign of the incredible pain he must have been experiencing. But he didn't stop. He continued cleaning the wound, his hand steady despite everything. "What are you doing?" Captain Daehyun asked, unable to contain his confusion. "Cleaning the wound," Ryan responded through gritted teeth. "Can't have infection set in. Basic first aid." The concept of basic was clearly very different for humans. The medical robots tried to approach, their advanced nanosurgical tools ready to perform precise medical interventions. Ryan waved them back with a bloodied hand. "I've got this," he muttered. Dr. Juwoo's medical scanner continued to provide impossible readings. The human's body was responding to the trauma in ways that defied all known medical understanding. Pain receptors that should have been overwhelmed were somehow being managed. Damaged tissue was already showing signs of rapid healing. Ryan reached for another item from his makeshift medical kit. It looked like a small heating device, something typically used for emergency survival situations, but he was using it for something entirely different. To the utter shock of the Kryvax medical team, Ryan began to carefully apply heat to parts of his wound. "Cauterization," he explained, seeing their stunned expressions. "Helps stop bleeding. Kills potential bacteria." Captain Daehyun leaned closer to Dr. Juwoo. "It's he," deliberately burning his own tissue. He whispered, his translator converting his native language into a hushed tone. Dr. Juwoo could only nod. The medical scanner showed the human was deliberately sealing blood vessels, preventing further blood loss through a method that looked absolutely barbaric by Kryvax standards. The healing process was violent, aggressive, completely at odds with the gentle, precise medical interventions the Kryvax were used to. Where their technology would use nanobots to carefully repair tissue, Ryan was using heat, chemical cleaning, and what seemed like sheer willpower. "Most medical teams would have me sedated by now," Ryan said, a hint of dark humor in his voice. "Hooked up to machines. Probably doing some fancy alien regeneration thing." He continued his self-treatment, seemingly unbothered by the massive trauma his body had experienced. The Kryvax team watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. This was not just medical treatment. This was a battle against injury itself. Ryan reached for another item, a strange foamy substance. Without hesitation, he began to apply it directly into the wound. The medical robot's sensors went wild, trying to analyze the substance. "Biofoam," Ryan explained. "Helps seal the wound. Prevents further complications." Captain Daehyun had seen many medical miracles in his years of space exploration, but nothing could have prepared him for this. Humans were not just surviving. They were actively fighting against their own injuries with a level of aggression that seemed almost impossible. The phrase "you call that first aid" began to form in his mind, a thought that would soon become legendary among galactic medical circles. Lieutenant Ryan Miller continued his impossible survival, rewriting the rules of medical science with each passing moment. The medical robots stood frozen. Their advanced programming couldn't compute the scene unfolding before them. Lieutenant Ryan Miller was performing medical procedures that violated every known galactic medical protocol. Dr. Juwoo's scanner continued to provide impossible readings. Ryan's body was doing things that should not be possible. He was not just surviving. He was actively fighting against his own injuries with a level of determination that seemed almost unnatural. "I need to reset this," Ryan muttered, his hands moving to the piece of shrapnel still embedded in his body. Captain Daehyun took a step forward. "You cannot," he started to say. But Ryan was already moving. With a swift, practiced motion, he began to manually adjust the position of the metal fragment. The Kryvax medical team watched in horrified fascination as he manipulated the piece of shrapnel with his own hands. A normal being would have screamed, would have passed out from the pain. But Ryan worked with a cold, calculated precision that suggested this was not his first brush with severe injury. The medical robot's sensors went into overdrive. They were recording something unprecedented. A living being performing complex medical procedures on themselves with nothing more than basic tools and an incredible pain tolerance. Ryan reached for a small container of medication. The Kryvax team recognized it as an emergency pain suppressor and healing accelerator. But instead of waiting for a medical professional to administer it, Ryan prepared the injection himself. "Normally, I'd have a medical team do this," he said, catching their stunned expressions. "But space exploration isn't always neat and tidy." Dr. Juwu couldn't help herself. "How are you doing this?" she asked, her translator converting her words into clear English. Ryan gave a weak chuckle. "Training," he responded. "Every human exploration team gets extensive medical cross-training. We're taught to keep ourselves alive when help might be days or weeks away." The concept was completely foreign to the Kryvax. Their medical teams were massive, with hundreds of specialists ready to respond to the slightest medical emergency. Humans, apparently, believed in self-reliance to an extreme degree. The injection went in. Ryan's body tensed for a moment, then relaxed. The medical scanner showed an immediate response, pain receptors dampening, cellular regeneration accelerating. But it was happening through means the Kryvax couldn't understand. "Your medical technology is impressive," Ryan said, looking at the stunned alien medical team. "But sometimes, all you've got is yourself, and whatever you can find." Captain Dahian stepped forward. "In our medical databases, an injury like yours would require immediate intensive care. Multiple surgical interventions, weeks of recovery." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Weeks? I'll be back on duty in a few days." The confidence was not bravado. The medical scanner confirmed it. Ryan's body was healing at a rate that defied all known medical understanding. Tissue was regenerating. Damaged cells were repairing themselves with an efficiency that seemed impossible. Dr. Juwu's hands shook slightly as she reviewed the data. Everything she knew about medical science was being challenged. Humans were not just another species. They were medical anomalies. The medical robots began to compile their report. But no existing medical database had protocols for what they were witnessing. A human performing complex medical procedures on himself, managing massive trauma with basic tools, healing at an impossible rate. Ryan noticed their stunned expressions. "What?" he asked. "Never seen someone patch themselves up before." The phrase would become legendary in medical circles, a simple statement that captured the essence of human survival. Lieutenant Ryan Miller continued to defy every expectation, rewriting the rules of medical science with each passing moment. The Kryvax medical team could only watch, their understanding of life and survival fundamentally challenged. This was more than a medical rescue. This was a revelation about the nature of survival itself. The medical bay of the Compassion buzzed with an unusual tension. Dr. Juwu had transferred Ryan to their most advanced medical facility, but not for the reasons one might expect. This was no ordinary patient. This was a case study in survival. Multiple holographic displays surrounded Ryan's medical bed. Each screen showed different readings, some from Kryvax medical technology, others from the human's own medical records. The data painted a picture that challenged everything the alien medical team thought they knew about biological survival. "Your medical database must be fascinating," Ryan said, breaking the tense silence. He was sitting up, despite having suffered an injury that would have killed most species. "I bet you've never seen anything like this before." Captain Dahian stood at the edge of the medical bay, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his back. "We have encountered over 217 different biological species in our medical exploration," he responded carefully. "But nothing compares to what we are witnessing with you." Dr. Juwu approached with another scanner. Her movements were careful, almost scientific. She was treating Ryan more like a research subject than a patient. "Your body's regenerative capabilities are beyond our current understanding," she said, her voice a mix of professional curiosity and genuine wonder. The holographic displays told a story of impossible recovery. Where a Kryvax would require months of intensive regenerative therapy, Ryan's body was healing at an exponential rate. Damaged tissues were rebuilding themselves. Cellular structures were repairing with a speed and efficiency that defied known medical science. "Humans call it trauma response," Ryan explained. "We're basically walking survival machines. Our bodies are designed to keep us alive under the worst conditions." The medical robots continued their endless scanning. Each pass of their sensors revealed something new. Pain receptors that should have been overwhelmed were being managed through some internal biological mechanism. Cellular regeneration was happening through means the Kryvax couldn't comprehend. "In our medical training," Dr. Ju said, "we are taught to minimize pain, to protect the patient, to ensure the most gentle recovery possible." Ryan chuckled. "Humans are different. We see pain as a signal, something to work through, not something to avoid." Captain Dahian leaned forward. "Explain," he requested. "In human exploration, in military training, in space missions, you can't always wait for perfect medical conditions," Ryan said. "Sometimes survival means working through the pain, pushing your body beyond what seems possible." The medical robots projected a holographic representation of Ryan's injury. It showed the massive shrapnel wound, the aggressive self-treatment, the rapid healing. Each stage was a testament to human resilience. Dr. Juwoo's hands moved across her control panel. She was documenting every single detail. This was more than a medical rescue. This was a fundamental discovery about biological adaptation. "Your species treats medical treatment like a battle," she observed, "not a gentle healing process." Ryan nodded. "Exactly. We don't just heal. We fight against injury. We push back against whatever is trying to kill us." The phrase "controlled medical violence" began to form in Dr. Juwoo's mind. It was the only way to describe what she was witnessing. Humans didn't just survive. They attacked their own injuries with a level of aggression that seemed almost impossible. The medical bay fell silent. The holographic displays continued their endless dance of data. Scanning. Analyzing. Trying to understand the impossible recovery happening before their eyes. Lieutenant Ryan Miller represented something more than a patient. He was a walking testament to human survival. A living example of a species that refused to be defeated by injury, by space, by impossible odds. The Kryvax medical team realized they were witnessing something revolutionary. This was not just about one human's survival. This was about understanding an entirely different approach to life itself. Survival, they were learning, was not just about healing. For humans, it was a constant, aggressive battle against whatever tried to stop them. The medical bay had transformed into something between a research facility and an interrogation room. Ryan sat on the edge of the medical bed, his body still showing signs of recent trauma, but healing at an impossible rate. Captain Dahian, Dr. Juwoo, and 3 other senior Kryvax medical researchers listened intently. "You want to know how humans handle medical emergencies?" Ryan began. "It's simple. We don't have the luxury of waiting." The translation device converted his words carefully, capturing not just the language but the underlying tone of pure determination. Dr. Juwoo leaned forward. Her 3-fingered hands gripped a data pad, ready to record every single word. "Explain," she requested. The word was more of a scientific command than a question. Ryan took a deep breath. In space exploration, in military operations, in extreme environments, help is not always coming. You learn to save yourself or you die. The Kryvax researchers exchanged looks. Their entire medical culture was built on immediate, precise intervention. Teams of specialists, advanced technologies, gentle, careful healing processes. Humans, apparently, had a completely different approach. "Our training starts early," Ryan continued. "Every human explorer, Every soldier, every space crew member gets extensive medical cross-training. We're not just specialists. We're generalists. Everyone knows how to keep themselves and their teammates alive. The medical robots continued their endless scanning. Each word Ryan spoke was analyzed, compared against existing databases, checked for potential inaccuracies. "Take this injury," Ryan said, pointing to the healing wound. "In a perfect world, I'd have a full medical team. Advanced equipment, precise interventions, but space is not perfect. Exploration is not safe." Captain Dahian stepped closer. "Your approach seems violent," he observed. Ryan laughed, a short, sharp sound that surprised the alien researchers. "Violence keeps you alive," he responded. "Pain is just a signal, not a stop sign. You work through it. You push back." The holographic displays continued to show Ryan's impossible healing. Cellular regeneration happening at speeds that defied all known medical understanding. Pain receptors being managed through some internal biological mechanism that the Kryvax couldn't comprehend. "In our exploration teams," Ryan explained, "we have a saying. Patch, push, survive. You clean the wound. You stop the bleeding. You manage the pain. You keep moving." Dr. Juwu's datapad was filling with information. Each word was a revelation. Humans didn't see medical treatment as a gentle process. They saw it as a battle, an aggressive response to potential death. "Your medical robots," Ryan said, pointing to the scanning devices, "they're designed to be precise, to minimize damage, to heal gently." He paused. "Human medical training is different. We're taught to be quick, to be aggressive, to use whatever is available." The Kryvax researchers realized they were witnessing more than a medical explanation. This was a fundamental cultural revelation. Humans didn't just survive. They fought against injury with every possible resource. "Space is dangerous," Ryan continued. "Exploration means accepting risk, means being ready to save yourself, means understanding that sometimes the best medical tool is your own determination." Captain Dahian's translator captured the nuance in Ryan's voice. This was not bravado. This was a simple statement of survival philosophy. The medical bay fell silent. The holographic displays continued their endless dance of data. Scanning, analyzing, trying to understand the philosophy behind human survival. Lieutenant Ryan Miller represented something more than a patient. He was a walking textbook of human resilience, a living example of a species that refused to be defeated by injury, by space, by impossible odds. "In space," Ryan said finally, his voice calm but firm, "you do what you must to stay alive. That's the human way." The Kryvax researchers knew they were experiencing something revolutionary. This was not just about medical treatment. This was about understanding an entirely different approach to survival itself. The research facility of the Compassion looked more like a high-tech fortress of scientific curiosity. Massive holographic displays covered every wall, each one showing different aspects of Lieutenant Ryan Miller's impossible recovery. Researchers from multiple alien species worked around the clock, their excitement palpable. Dr. Juwu stood at the center of it all, her hands moving across multiple data interfaces. Ryan had become more than a patient. He was now the most important research subject in galactic medical history. Cellular regeneration rates are 427% above standard biological recovery models, one research assistant announced. Her voice trembled with excitement. The subject's pain management systems are completely unprecedented. The medical robots continued their endless scanning. But now, they were doing more than just monitoring. They were learning. Each scan revealed something new about human biological capabilities. Ryan sat nearby, seemingly unbothered by being the center of such intense scientific scrutiny. He watched the researchers with a mix of amusement and patience. To him, this was just another day of space exploration. Captain Dahian approached Dr. Juwu. "What have we learned?" he asked. Dr. Juwu pulled up a holographic summary. It was a complex web of biological data that looked more like an intricate star map than a medical report. Humans are not just another species, she explained. They are biological anomalies. Their bodies are designed to survive in conditions that would kill most known life forms. The research highlighted several key discoveries. 1. Extreme pain tolerance. Ryan's nervous system processed pain differently. Where most species would be completely incapacitated, he remained functional. 2. Rapid cellular regeneration. His body didn't just heal. It actively fought against injury with an aggression that defied medical understanding. 3. Adaptive medical response. Ryan could make complex medical decisions under extreme stress. His training allowed him to become his own emergency medical team. We're looking at a species that treats survival as an active process, Dr. Ju said, not a passive condition. The researchers worked in shifts. Some focused on Ryan's cellular structure. Others analyzed his medical history. Every piece of data was a puzzle piece in understanding human biological capabilities. His medical training is as important as his biological capabilities, one researcher noted. Humans don't just have advanced bodies. They have advanced training. Ryan watched the research with a calm demeanor. Occasionally, he would offer additional information, a detail about human medical training, an explanation of a specific survival technique. The medical robots recorded everything, each word, each movement, each biological response. In our exploration teams, Ryan explained during one research session, we train for the worst-case scenario. Space is unforgiving. You prepare or you die. The researchers were fascinated. Human medical training was not just about knowledge. It was about mental preparation, about understanding that survival sometimes meant making difficult choices. Dr. Ju's research team began to compile their initial report. The document would change galactic understanding of biological survival. Humans are not just survivors, one draft of the report read. They are biological warriors. Their bodies and minds are designed to push back against impossible odds. Ryan represented something more than a medical case study. He was a living example of human resilience, a walking testament to a species that refused to be defeated by injury, by space, by impossible circumstances. The research continued. Each day brought new discoveries. Each scan revealed more about human biological capabilities. In the vast research facility of the Compassion something revolutionary was happening. The understanding of life itself was being rewritten, one human data point at a time. Survival, the researchers were learning, was not just about healing. For humans, it was a constant, aggressive battle against whatever tried to stop them. The Galactic Medical Conference was the most important scientific gathering in known space. Held on a massive space station that orbited a neutral star system, it brought together medical experts from hundreds of different species. Researchers spent years preparing their presentations, hoping to share groundbreaking discoveries. This year was different. Lieutenant Ryan Miller stood at the center of the main conference hall. Around him, holographic displays showed his medical records, his impossible recovery, and the research conducted by the CRIVAX medical team. The hall was packed. Every seat was filled. Even the standing areas were crowded with researchers from across the galaxy. Dr. Ju introduced him. Her voice was calm, but carried a hint of excitement that was unusual for her species. What you are about to see, she said, will challenge everything we know about medical science. Ryan looked out at the sea of alien faces. Some had multiple eyes. Some had no eyes at all. Some breathed different atmospheres and required special environmental suits, but they all shared one thing: an intense scientific curiosity. Humans approach medical emergencies differently, Ryan began. His presentation started with a simple video of his own injury and self-treatment aboard the damaged spacecraft. Where most species see a fatal injury, we see a problem to solve. The holographic displays showed his medical treatment in excruciating detail. The way he cleaned the wound, how he managed pain, the improvised medical techniques he used to keep himself alive. Gasps filled the conference hall. Some alien species looked horrified. Others looked fascinated. A few looked angry, as if Ryan was challenging their entire medical understanding. In human space exploration, Ryan continued, we have a simple rule. Patch, push, survive. You clean the wound. You stop the bleeding. You manage the pain. You keep moving. Dr. Juwoo's research team had prepared extensive documentation. Each slide showed a different aspect of human medical capabilities: cellular regeneration rates, pain management techniques, the incredible mental training that allowed humans to make complex medical decisions under extreme stress. The most shocking revelation was simple. Humans did not see medical treatment as a gentle process. They saw it as a battle. Our bodies are designed to fight, Ryan explained. Pain is not a stop sign. It's a signal. You work through it. You push back. Researchers from different species began to ask questions. Some were hostile. Some were genuinely curious. How can you function with such aggressive medical techniques? Asked a researcher from a species that looked like living crystals. Survival is not comfortable, Ryan responded. It's about doing what needs to be done. The presentation continued. Each slide was a challenge to existing medical understanding. Humans were not just another species. They were biological anomalies, a species that treated survival as an active, aggressive process. Dr. Juwoo's research team had prepared extensive data, comparative studies showing how human medical techniques differed from other species, detailed analysis of Ryan's impossible recovery, the mental and physical training that made such survival possible. The conference hall buzzed with tension. Some researchers were taking notes. Others were arguing. A few looked like their entire understanding of medical science was being torn apart. Humans explore space knowing the risks, Ryan said. We prepare. We train. We understand that sometimes survival means making difficult choices. As the presentation concluded, the conference hall erupted. Some applauded. Some looked shocked. A few researchers looked like they were ready to argue. Lieutenant Ryan Miller had done more than share a medical case study. He had challenged the fundamental understanding of survival itself. The Galactic Medical Conference would never be the same. 6 months after the Galactic Medical Conference, everything had changed. The phrase, "you call that first aid," had become more than just words. It was a statement that captured the essence of human survival. Research stations across multiple star systems were studying human medical techniques. What was once considered barbaric was now seen as revolutionary. Alien medical academies began adding human survival training to their core curriculum. Lieutenant Ryan Miller sat in a small observation room, looking out at the stars. His latest medical checkup showed complete recovery, a process that would have taken years for most species. Dr. Juwoo stood nearby, still fascinated by the human before her. "We fundamentally misunderstood survival," she said, reviewing his medical records one more time. "Humans don't just heal. They fight." Ryan smiled. It was a simple gesture that seemed to carry years of experience. "Survival is an active process," he responded. "Not something that happens to you. Something you make happen." The research had revealed more than just medical capabilities. It showed a deeper truth about human nature. Where other species saw limitations, humans saw challenges to overcome. Where others would stop, humans would push forward. Alien medical journals were filled with studies about human resilience. Each publication told a similar story. Humans were not just another species in the vast galaxy. They were something different, something unexpected. The Kryvax medical team had become celebrities of sorts. Their research had changed everything. Medical understanding was being rewritten, one human case study at a time. Most species see medical treatment as a gentle process, Dr. Juwoo explained during a recent interview. Humans see it as a battle, a constant fight against whatever tries to stop them. Training programs began to change. Medical academies across different planets started incorporating human survival techniques. What was once seen as extreme was now viewed as innovative. Ryan reflected on his journey. the damaged spacecraft, the impossible injury, the endless research, the conference that changed everything. In space, he often said, "You don't get second chances. You either survive or you don't." The phrase became a motto for space explorers, a simple statement that captured the essence of human determination. Other species began to look at humans differently. No longer were they just another civilization. They were survivors, adaptable, resilient, a species that refused to be defeated by injury, by space, by impossible odds. Dr. Juwu's research team continued their work. Each study revealed more about human capabilities, how they trained, how they survived, how they turned medical emergencies into opportunities for survival. The galactic medical community had learned an important lesson. Survival was not about avoiding risk. It was about facing it head-on, about being prepared, about pushing back. Humans don't just explore space, one research paper concluded. They challenge it. They fight against its limitations. In research stations, medical academies, and exploration ships, the human approach was being studied, copied, and respected. Lieutenant Ryan Miller represented something more than a medical case study. He was a living example of human potential, a walking testament to a species that sought every challenge as an opportunity to survive. As he looked out at the stars, Ryan knew something important. The universe was vast and dangerous, but humans would continue to explore, to survive, to push forward. The phrase, "You call that first aid," had become more than just words. It was a statement about human nature itself. Survival, they had learned, was not just about healing. For humans, it was a constant, aggressive battle against whatever tried to stop them. And in the vast, unforgiving darkness of space, that made all the difference.